Do you ever wish someone would draw you a map and give you the directions to the career of your dreams? If so, consider this podcast your GPS to a career where you feel strong, fulfilled, and passionate about your work, day in and day out. On this show, I am sharing the tools to help you advocate for your strengths, discover your passions, and learn from folks who transformed their careers for the better. My name is Joyel Crawford, your fairy god mentor, and with my 18 years of experience in HR at a Fortune 50 company and 20 years of coaching and mentoring top leaders, I am thrilled to be your guide on this career journey. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to Career View Mirror. I'm your host, Joyel Crawford, your fairy god mentor, and today I have a very special guest, Tim Harrison. After researching psychology, playing Division I basketball, and serving as the president of the Black Male Leadership Initiative at Rice University, Tim Harrison took a leap of faith by turning down his dream job in strategy consulting to pursue his mission to create a world where more people realize their potential. This led Tim to found the Enjoyable Pain of Growth Academy, EPOG Academy. It's a nonprofit organization that empowers students in under-resourced communities to take control of their future through top-tier coaching and personal development. Their latest initiative is developing an AI-powered coaching platform to address the 400 to 1 student to counselor guidance gap. Through his coaching and consulting firm, Onus Leadership, Tim leads delivery on a $3 million NIH-backed research study on the impact of coaching on underrepresented biomedical PhD students. Tim is one of 8 members of the Global Task Force for AI and Coaching for the International Coaching Federation, or ICF. As a consultant, he helps professionals and organizations leverage AI effectively, authentically, and responsibly so that they can increase their profits and impact. He's also a member of the inaugural cohort of Forefront, along with myself, a renowned leadership accelerator for rising stars in the coaching industry, founded by #1 leadership thinker, Marshall Goldsmith. Welcome, welcome, welcome
Yeah,
to
glad to be
Career
here.
Mirror.
Glad to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. Yes, Tim and I were inaugural members of Forefront, which has been growing and blossoming since we started way back in the day. And as your career has. And so one of my biggest questions is how did you go from playing basketball, giving up your strategy, this dream job in strategy consulting, to becoming a coach?
Yeah. I definitely say my path has been unexpected, but I think that's the best path to take. You guys can't tell because I'm in this little rectangle, but I'm actually 6'8", and so I played Division I basketball at Rice University in Houston.
Mhm.
And in high school, I was a standout basketball player, and I was figuring I was going to keep that trajectory going. I was like, can I take basketball as far as I can? About 2 years in, I kind of got to see where I was, and then I tore my meniscus, which ended my season. And I started to look at, okay, well, what's beyond basketball for me? I was always interested in school, but I just didn't have anything that I just like latched onto that I knew like, oh, this is what I want to be. And that was a bit of an identity crisis for me. You know, everywhere I go, even today, if I go to the store, everyone just says, oh, do you play basketball? How tall are you? All that. And so it was my own personal identity. Like I love basketball. I was passionate about it. I was good at it, poured a lot. But also everyone else, like when they perceive me, that's what they see first, even today. And so I had to reinvent myself.
Mm.
And that's what drew me towards personal development. I started reading books on mindset, emotional intelligence, all these different things of like really trying to figure out who I was.
Mhm.
And fortunately, my school had a program where I got an ICF coach as an undergrad called the Door Institute. And so for me, that took all this stuff that I was learning in personal development with this very practical application leadership focus of not just navigating yourself to kind of get back to base, but
Mhm.
also, wait, now that I know these things, what can I now do? And at the same time, I studied psychology. So I did, cognitive neuroscience, social psychology, all that stuff, just obsessed about why do we do what we do? And it was this intersection of these three different things, this leadership coaching, let me apply this stuff with here's how my brain is wired, with
Mhm.
also here are positive ways that I can leverage my own mindset to change my reality. And to me, I just fell in love with that intersection. And I ended up landing my dream job at a company called Accenture, doing strategy consulting.
Yeah.
So even coming from a psychology background to going into strategy consulting was its own miniature reinvention.
Yes.
It's a very
Yes.
not a lateral path, but it
Mhm.
just taught me that, hey, you can set your mind to something, you can break it down into smaller steps. And if you like do those steps over time and adjust as you go, like you can create the life you want. And I think that was a very important realization to have at a young age, because I realized that like I'm in the driver's seat. I don't have to go down a track. I don't have to accept what life gives me.
Yep.
Can happen to life. And in doing so, I can actually make life better for other people. Like I can lead an organization that's going to empower people, help people find jobs and those kinds of things. And so I was super ecstatic to go from like struggling in my athletic career, frankly,
Mhm.
to being a leader on campus and knowing the president and being kind of the big man on campus and doing those
Mhm.
different things. I was feeling myself. I was ready to go and like launch a successful career.
Mhm.
And I graduated in 2020, which if you
Okay.
guys remember, there's a lot going on in the world in 2020.
Yes, the world shut down
World
literally in
shut down.
2020.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We had a global pandemic. And then right after I was graduating, like in the summertime, that's when all the social and racial unrest after George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor happened.
Yep.
And our country was just in so much turmoil. A lot of things were being brought to light. And here I am in quarantine, just had this transformation. I'm thinking about, well, who do I want to be in the next phase of my life? And I remember I was riding my bike and I was listening to an audiobook, and I heard a quote by a man named Howard Thurman,
Okay.
who's a mentor of Dr. King. And he said, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, and go do that, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. And
Mm.
right then and there, I like hit the brakes and I just stopped on my bike and I was like, yes, that's it right there. Because I was like, man, I have this successful path in front of me. I've overcome these different things, but I'm seeing the world's on fire. The world's upside down.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's more to life than me just trying to make more money and try to rise up the ladder. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I just always had this deep sense that there's more that I was called to contribute to the world. I wanted to live a life of contribution, like not just building for myself, but like, why did it matter that I was here? And this
Right.
life is finite. And so I ended up thinking about, well, how could I live that out? What makes me come alive? And I realized it's about pushing the boundaries of possibility. If I felt like I couldn't do something, but like overcoming that and realizing that it was possible,
Mhm.
or even with other people, when a lot of times we have our own limitations with, oh, we say we can't do this, or we're not like that, or this isn't for people like me, helping people overcome those mental barriers and like pushing the boundaries of what's possible so you can maximize your potential. And I was like, yes, that's it. Like, that's what I want to spend all my time doing in one way, shape, or form. And
Mhm.
then I started to look, well, where are the needs? And it was around that time where a lot of just economic disparity was being brought to light.
Yes.
And I think a lot of the economic disparity that we see has its roots in education, where if you're
Right.
born in the wrong zip code, you don't have access to the same tools to maximize your potential. And so I
Mhm.
was like, man, what if you combined this development process that I went through, this coaching, this personal development, but also it's rooted in research and psychology. I was like, there's some
Yes.
rigor to this. And I was like, why did I have to go through this major crisis to come across this information that changed my life, that empowered me to change my life? Like, what if you got students access to that and you can do it in a controlled way and you could like actually measure, like, I'd be willing to bet you could help someone change the trajectory of their life. And I was like, yeah, I think that's true. I was like, okay, crap. Well, someone's got to do that. And so, but I had this tension because I had that job lined up, making
Yes.
six figures, had the big company name. It
Yeah.
was like my reward for all the work that I had put in.
Yep.
And I felt myself so attached to that. I was like, oh no, this is like my sign to society that I'm a success.
I
Right.
made it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it's like, no, I actually am going to go the opposite direction. I'm going to start this nonprofit and I don't know how I'm going to make the money. No one knows what this company name means. And the world is just crazy right now anyways. Like, but I was like, man, I had such a deep feeling that I knew that there's certain moments in your life where you feel called to something.
Yes.
And personally, I'm a man of faith and I felt like there was a calling attached to this. And I thought more about who am I going to be, not who do people think I am.
Yeah.
And so I ended up turning down that job offer, took a leap of faith, and I started EPOG Academy, which accomplishes that mission, makes personal development part of education to empower students to take control of their future.
Beautiful. So beautiful. I mean, I know we were peers in Forefront, but I feel so proud of you, like a little auntie. Just hearing this story, and it makes so much sense, because I think a lot of times as students are trying to find their way, or we've gone through this track of a career path, and we follow the path that seems like the logical path, because that's what I studied to do this. This is where I'm going. This is going to give me a good livelihood. And we almost have to redefine what success is. And it took me 30 years to figure out that I was like living my parents' dream instead of my own personal, like listening to what was inside of me and what I was being called to. And I really appreciate that you broke down each of the thought processes and steps that you took that led you there. Like, and it's not a straight line. There were a lot of different twists and turns to follow what you were called to do, that lights you up.
Yeah, definitely.
That's great.
And I think there is a practicality and a logic of following your passion. I feel like sometimes that term and that advice is thrown around like, yeah, just do what makes you feel good. I actually think it's very different. And I thought about this even then. I was like, well, how am I actually like uniquely wired? Because to me, what makes me come alive, we tend to desire in the way that we're wired. So if you're a creative mind, you're drawn towards areas in which your creativity would thrive. If you are very logical and system oriented and detailed, you're going to thrive and come alive doing those types of tasks. So it wasn't just like, oh, what would be fun to do? It's also like, how am I wired uniquely? Because if I pursue that and I put in, an hour of effort, I'm going to make an hour, 1.5 hour or 2 hours of progress. Versus if I'm doing something that's against my nature, I'm going to put an hour of effort and make like half as much progress.
Right.
And so it was also like, if I want to become the best at what I do, if I want to maximize my potential, I need to first identify, well, how am I uniquely wired? So I took personality assessments. I learned about trait openness, conscientiousness, the big 5 personality. And I'm like, oh, this is literally how I'm wired. And these are the types of things that people with this profile thrive at. And I was like, okay. And then it happened to be aligned with the things that I wanted.
Right.
Then I was like, well, how can I spend the maximum amount of my time doing this? Because you need your 10,000 hours or deliberate practice to get mastery. So it was very practical too. It wasn't just, hey, let me do this thing. It was also like, how do I set my life up in such a way that I'm maximizing my unique gifts, that I'm also enjoying it, and that I can have the greatest impact on the world at the same time?
Yes.
And so to me, that was the decision I was making. It wasn't just about turning down the job and pursuing this. I think it definitely was. But over the time, I was 22 and I'm 27, but I've spent like 5 years of like fully spending all my time on the things that are gripping me. And I think that that's led to me learning and developing and bringing out parts of me that I think would have been dormant even if I had gone like a different route.
That's amazing. I mean, it's just like constant self-reflection, self-improvement, self-development. It's like, it's not just a one and done kind of thing. It's a lifelong pursuit, because that also impacts the work that you're doing and the work that you're bringing into the world. Tell me about the typical day. Like, is there a typical day in your life, Tim?
I don't know if there's anything typical. Like, things change a lot, and that's kind of the constant. What I have done though is I've created structure. Like I thrive in spontaneity and improvise. It's kind of how I'm wired. Being able to freestyle things. A lot of times I come up with great ideas last minute, but that's not always conducive to like being consistent. And so what I've learned is what works for me is to have controlled chaos. And so what I'll do is I'll be very structured and methodical, and then I'll like allow myself to like play and be kind of wild within that container. So the way I set up my day is, I got this from this book called The One Thing, where I block out my mornings. I don't take any calls in the morning, ever. And I use that to focus on my number one priority. So I need long periods of time and space to think and to do things. Because if you don't intentionally go out of your way to create time to think, you end up just doing the next thing, doing the next thing, doing the next thing. And you can spend years doing that without looking up and saying, well, why am I doing this in the first place?
Right.
So I have that structured time in the morning for me. And then in the afternoons, I'm more like, okay, I'm meeting, I'm, getting on deliverables and whatnot. And so I have like a very, very unstructured morning after like my morning routine. And then I have like a very, very structured afternoon. And then I'm usually working into the evening. I'll probably have a little bit more space or, whatever it demands that day.
Are you one of those entrepreneurs or business owners that believes in like waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and having, meditation and morning minutes and all of that? Is that part of your morning ritual?
I used to be a lot more stringent about like getting up at like 5:55 or 5:25. I need sleep though. So I realized like, I need rest. Like I'm just not productive if I'm not rested. So if you're getting up at 5:25, like everyone likes to brag about how early they wake up. What matters is like, what time do you go to bed too? Because if you're going to bed at midnight and you're getting up at 5, you're just not a productive version of yourself most of the time, So it's like, I'm just going to bed at 9 and getting up that early. So I'd rather like stay up later. But I do have a miracle morning routine. I meditate, I get in the word, I journal, reflect, try to learn something, stimulate my mind. I try like my darndest to like not have my phone by my bed so I don't check it. And then I start going down the track of here's what the world is telling me I should focus on right now.
Right.
Instead, I think first about, I go inward and upward, and then I reflect, and then I choose, okay, this is what I'm doing for the day. And then I go in and then I'll check. And so I notice if you can win the first 30 minutes of your day, you can win like the rest of that day. But if you start off reactive and like just consuming, you end up I just find myself being more lethargic. And so I got to happen to my days, not let my days happen to me.
Ooh, happen to the days, not the days happen to me. Gem. I wish I had like a little graphic, to put like little gems when you're dropping them, because you're dropping a lot of them. Thank you for like walking me through that day, because that's it's always interesting to know what people's daily routine or morning routines are to set them up for success for the day. And you have a big point about not looking at the phone. I have a bad habit of doing that because I have a meditation app, so I need to turn it on so that I get my credit for the. But then I'm like, well, since I'm in here, let me just scroll through here, and then it's downhill from there. So no, I think that's a great point to try to maybe turn it on and then throw the phone somewhere in the corner. So I could be in the right mind frame.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about AI and coaching and this fabulous grant that you have from the NIH and that project and the work that you're doing in that.
Yeah. Those are separate projects, but I can kind of catch you up for my journey. So that's how I started. That's how I got into coaching and on this path with the nonprofit. At the same time, I knew I was going to start a coaching company, so I needed to get certified. And I didn't want to just be another self-proclaimed life coach. I wanted to get trained. I wanted to know how to do this because I had a ICF coach who's an executive coach. And I knew that there was different levels to how you can get coached and how you can get trained. And so fortunately, the program I was in college actually waived the $10,000 fee for me to actually get this training like at 22. And most people aren't getting this training until they're like mid-career or later in their career.
Right.
And so when I was in the cohort, I was with this company called MD Anderson, and they're the top cancer research kind of hospital in the world.
Yes.
And so they send their top level leaders to get trained as coaches. So they're better managers. And so it's me fresh out of college, starting this nonprofit, like so much passion. And these like senior level executive leaders in the cohort. And we're learning to coach together and we're coaching each other on the side. And at the end of it, I was like, shoot, hey, y'all seen me coach. Y'all know I'm good at what I do. Would some of you take me on as your coach? And several of them said yes. So I was able to start my coaching career while I was doing the nonprofit, coaching senior level leaders at, a large organization. And so I had this parallel where I was building the coaching company, but I was also coaching. And you learn a lot as you coach too, about how people approach things. And so those have been like the two branches that I have had, is like one foot in education and then the other in professional development space. And so that's kind of how I started my career. And with EPOG, we started off connecting professional level coaches, just like I was, and just like these trained professionals, with high school students in low income communities to help augment their counseling department. And so they would meet with a professional quality coach who's charging $500 an hour, $750 an hour in corporate, and they get to work on their life. They get to craft their future. They get to understand their strengths. They get to break things down, and they have this accountability partner, but also someone who's helping them see things that they may not learn in school about, how are you wired? How do you deal with overwhelm and stress? What's in your control? What's not in your control? Emotional intelligence, those kinds of things I think are just powerful in your direction.
Yeah, and so, which are not taught in school.
Which are not the default. Right. And so that evolved. And so we started to grow, but then we hit a limit with how many students we could serve, because you run out of private spaces for students to have conversations with their coach.
Right.
And so the need is so much greater than like the small programs we were able to do. And about 2 years in, I started to think, well, man, I want to continue to expand my impact. And I know what we're doing is working. We've done studies on it and everything, but we need a new format. And it was around that time that AI started to really take off. It was very late 2022. ChatGPT came out in November of 2022. And I first used it Christmas Eve. I was back in San Diego, is where I grew up. And I used it for the first time. So that was December. And I remember I was just like mind blown. I had heard about AI in the past, and like I knew, they think AI is going to transform society one day. But I remember I saw someone said something they did on it, and I downloaded it, and I created an account, and I was like, man, this is like, is this that moment where like we're now entering this new age of technology? And so I started to use it a ton, and just first testing like, what can it do? I'd ask the questions, have it write a poem, or like, I was like, oh wow, this computer's like talking to me and the words are going across the screen. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm running 2 organizations. I have no shortage of like stuff to do. Like, can this actually be useful for me? And I remember I tested it out. I wrote a grant for the nonprofit. It used to take me, maybe like 10, 15 hours to write a grant, because you have to answer all these questions, do this research.
Right.
And I cut that down to about a couple hours, like 1 or 2 hours. Wow. And I was like, whoa. And it was better because I got feedback on it, and I used it like, oh, hey, what is something that I didn't consider, or can I make this clearer? So not just it doing it for me, but it was this thought partner. And then I started to evolve more and more, and I was like, you know what? Can I use this with the students? And so I used ChatGPT to teach me how to code a like basic web application that would take inputs from a student, their interests, their strengths, what they want in a career, how much money they want to make, and it would spit back 5 different career pathways for them that resonated with them. And a lot of times what we found is when they met with our coach, the number one thing they would work on is what they want to do after high school.
Yes.
First, right? But unfortunately, if you ask them, hey, what do you want to do? They often just say what they've been exposed to, right? Which is sometimes underneath what they might be capable of. They just don't know what exists. So if they knew it exists, they would slightly change their trajectory. And there's a lot of things that are attainable that they just don't know are out there.
Right.
And so the beauty of AI is it takes all this broad information of everything that's out there, but then it tailors it to that student, and they can generate multiple pathways. And then that evolved into realizing that, okay, we give them a pathway, but how many of us have goals? And like, just because you have a goal doesn't mean you're going to achieve it.
Right.
It's all the smaller things that you do on a day in and day out that determine whether or not you actually make that progress. So I was like, can we leverage AI to help with some of the day-to-day stuff? Can we build a coach GPT, so to say?
Yeah.
So we built out a prototype. This was back early 2023. And we found that they were using it to resolve a wide range of challenges like academic, personal, professional. And they would even rather talk to the AI coach than their counselor in the classroom because it won't judge them. It can talk to it 24/7. And it has this broad level of information. Now they go to it for different things as we're learning, as we continue to evolve. But I pivoted the organization, and so now we have developed a Power Path, which is an app that helps students navigate towards their goals. So we call it's a GPS for success.
Nice.
Destination, and it understands a little bit about where you are now.
Yeah.
And it helps you both in the long-term planning of where do I actually want to go to what am I focusing on this week? Here's what's getting in my way, and having this conversation with this trained AI coach that can help them resolve and think through different things based on research and psychology about how they can overcome challenges. And so we've been on that path. We just launched with a big pilot with a district here in Houston called Humble ISD, and so we've evolved quite a bit, and it's a journey of reinvention. Genuinely, as the company changes, I have to change as the world around us changes.
Yes, indeed. The key is to be flexible, that flexibility, and to kind of keep up with all the changes that are happening. So that's got to be a challenge. But it sounds like you're keeping pace with what's going on. So what advice can you give to our audience members about using AI as a thought partner?
Yeah, definitely. In tandem, as I was building the company in the AI product, I also have been doing a lot of speaking, training, coaching, consulting on how to get the practical applications out of AI. From my time being on the ICS AI task force, I got exposed to a lot of the people around the world who are using AI in a coaching context in a variety of ways. And I noticed that there's this gap between, this theoretical, like, what is AI? Is it going to end the world? Is it going to save the world? Versus, but here I am, I'm like, wow, I'm saving 20 hours this month. And there's things that I couldn't do that I can now do because of this. And I saw the impact that had on my career. And I noticed that there's a few misconceptions that people have. One is they think that you have to be technical in order to be good with AI, and that's not true. AI actually leverages your own existing expertise. It actually compounds your skills because the way that you interact with it is through language. So if you can speak, you can now produce results. There's tools out there that let you go from text to apps, meaning that you can describe the app that you want and it can build that out. It'll write the code. And so the barrier of entry for every level of expertise is now super low. It's an expert lawyer, it's an expert coder, it's an expert across all these domains, and it's getting smarter. So one is the myth that you don't have to be technical, you just have to talk. That's it. Another thing is that it's like robotic and it's stagnant. It's like I don't want it to write my emails because it sounds like it's ChatGPT. It's almost like kind of a joke or a meme.
Yeah, it's a little cold and hollow.
Yeah. And I think that one of the things I encourage people is to take ownership over it, because it's this like open black box and has all these capabilities. Most people aren't even aware of all the things that it can do. And so instead of saying, oh, it is X, Y, and Z, think, well, how am I using it? There's a principle called garbage in, garbage out.
Yes.
And a lot of times, if someone is saying, oh, when I use AI, it sounds like X, Y, and Z, that just tells me, oh, they're not prompting it. They're not giving it context. They're not telling it the tone. And so taking ownership over the results that you get tends to help people go a long way. So instead of just saying, hey, write an email response saying X, Y, and Z, give it context. You say, hey, I'm following up with this person. This is the second time that I've had to reschedule. So I want to make sure I say it a little bit nicer, right? A little bit, right? Say it in a very polite way. And here's kind of the idea. Or, hey, I'm creating a report or a presentation. Hey, here is the feedback that I got from the last one. What are some things that I can incorporate moving forward, right? So taking ownership over how you use it. And then I'd also say it's not a person. And we don't have any other reference for things that are intelligent other than other people.
Right.
And so it's new. And so it's weird. It talks like a person. In some ways it behaves like a person, but it does not think like an actual person.
Right.
And it's weird because you don't know exactly how it is, but it has a what's called a jagged frontier, meaning that it has these capabilities, but it's not even. So just because it gets smarter in one area doesn't mean that every other area gets smarter. Any human being that I know who can quote Shakespeare word for word, paragraph by paragraph, can also tell you how many R's there are in the word strawberry. But a large language model can't, because of how it thinks, because of how it produces the words. It actually can't go back and tell you. And so you have to actually use the tools and get an intuition for what it can and can't do. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to use AI or I'm not going to use AI. You have to look at it in terms of, well, what is today's capabilities? What are the things that I'm already doing? And how can I unlock, doing things better, faster, cheaper, safer, or in a way that was previously not possible? And it moves very fast. And even someone who's spending a lot of my work doing this, it's too much for me to keep up with, let alone busy professionals. You already have things that you need to do. You have a lot of things that you want to learn. Now I got to learn this other thing. But instead, I encourage people to take an experimental mindset. I call it my applied innovation lab. It's the thing I'm launching in about a month, where I'm helping people leverage AI in their business. But specifically, it's called a lab because it's about ongoing experimentation. It's not about mastering ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or Gamma, which are some of the AI tools out there that are very popular. It's really about looking at your business with the hat of being an experimenter. Here's the things that I do. Here's what I know is capable in the AI right now. And let me try this. Does this actually save me time? Run that experiment and see, okay, yes or no. And you decide, okay, will I do this again or will I not? And you just want to have ongoing experimentation. That way, even when new tools come out, you can say, hey, I ran this experiment a month ago and the AI wasn't smart enough or it didn't capture my voice in the way I wanted to. I heard about this new update. Let me go and do that again. And you can say, oh, yes, it has. And so over the last 2-3 years, I've run probably hundreds of experiments. And that is how I kind of stay up to date with all the things that are going on.
So that's another tip, is to not be afraid of using the tool. Experiment, approach it as a lab, or sign up for your lab.
Yeah, definitely.
To get some more practice.
Yeah, and I like posting stuff all the time on my LinkedIn and stuff so people are aware, because it first starts with awareness.
Yes.
You don't know what's out there. If you don't know that to even think about this, there's no way you can apply it.
Right.
And then after awareness, you have knowledge. Knowledge is what can it do and what can it do? Okay, so I know ChatGPT exists, but it's not an end all be all. It's great at these things. It's not great at these things. And it's about not blindly adopting AI because it's the next shiny thing. It's about, like, is this a good decision for me and my business to apply this? And then from awareness to knowledge to skills. So skills comes from practical application. So once you know what it can and can't do, as you use it, you get an intuition. And you get better at prompting it a different way, or you get better at knowing which tool to use for which situation. And then the last level is results. And results is where you take a strategic look at your business. What are my goals? What are the things that get me there? And what are the workflows that support me making progress? And now, knowing what I know about AI, can I replace something that I've been doing for probably my whole career that I've gotten used to, but maybe there's a new way to do this? And then so teaching people the framework in which to look at your business like that. And we've had several people. I did a pilot of about 15 different professional coaches, business owners, and some of them have saved over 15 hours in the first 4 weeks, which is more time than they spent on the program. And so it's like there's huge gains that you can get.
Huge gains, huge. I mean, to have 15 hours back, whether you're a business owner or not, like, that's amazing. That is amazing. To get that much time back.
Yeah. And the beauty of it is, like, you don't have to take a course on this. Like, this stuff is out there. And if you're willing to learn and go see it, you can go and apply it. What I do is I help curate it, because, you may not have all the time to stay up to date with all the latest tools. And I've run these hundreds of experiments. And so I have an intuition for what things you can do and can't do. And so I encourage everyone to just go right now and try it out. See if you can help yourself. And if you feel like you want something that's a little bit more curated or a little bit battle tested, or you want to be around other professionals who are entering this journey with you, you can learn, oh, what are they doing? What am I doing? That's why I've created this additional space.
Awesome. One last question for you. I always ask this of my guests, and it would be, what career advice would you give to your younger self? What would you tell younger Tim? What's one piece of career advice that you would give him?
Yeah, he figured out how to get to me. So I feel like I always think about that. It's like, you don't have to know everything at a given stage. You just have to know enough to get to the next stage. Because at the next stage, you'll have more perspective to get to the next one. I feel like I had a good head on my shoulders, and I had like the right ingredients, but certain things you just learn through experience.
Right.
I think that I would probably say just think even bigger. Like I think the biggest risk in life is not that we aim too high and miss, it's that we aim too low and we hit. And you never know what the cost of not is. So you think, well, if I do this, then this could happen, or if I do this, then that might happen. But we hardly like reflect and say, well, if I never do this, or if I don't do this, what am I losing out on? And so thinking about the opportunity cost as the biggest waste that we all make, because you don't know the potential that you don't tap into. So I already think big and dream big, but even for the listeners of like, ask yourself a question like, if I could do 10 times as much or accomplish 10 times as much as what I'm doing right now, what would I have to do differently? Because a lot of times doing something 10 times as big is not 10 times as hard. It rarely ever is. What ends up happening is there's this threshold that you reach. Once you reach a certain level of difficulty, you have to think about a completely new way of getting there.
Yes.
Like if I said you have to walk down the street, or you have to get down the street, you'll probably walk. If I say you have to get down the block, you might take your bike if you have a bike. If I say you get across town, you'll take your car. But if I say you need to go 500 miles today, you don't even think about walking. You don't even think about a bike. You don't think about a car. You say, I got to get a plane ticket.
Yes.
And so what happens is if you never ask yourself, well, what would 5,000 miles look like for me? You never realize that there's other vehicles at your disposal. And the truth is, it's actually like less physical effort for me to fly across the world than for me to like go run, several blocks. Like it's less physical effort. So just because it's bigger doesn't mean it's harder. It's just like you have to figure out where's that threshold for you. So I encourage people to ask yourself, and it's kind of scary to ask yourself, what would I have to do to earn 10 times as much? What would I have to do to serve 100 times as many people? It might seem scary because you're thinking about how would I bike 5,000 miles? And that's daunting.
A lot.
But just like let that go and just say, well, what would I have to do differently to do that? And you'll find, even if you don't do that exact thing, I guarantee you'll find things that you didn't realize were approaches that are available to you. And so that's what I would encourage, I guess, my younger self is to like think 100 times as big for something and do those thought exercises more, because there's things that I stumbled upon later that have provided extreme leverage that if I just, it wasn't because I'm more capable now, I just didn't think of it. And so I would say, ask yourself big questions.
Ask yourself big questions. Well, I am so glad that you answered our questions, my small questions today. And I'm just over the moon. Where can we find more about you and your programs and find you?
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn is like the hub right now. I post things with EPOG Academy, my different projects. I don't feel like I have chosen a career. I feel like I've chosen a mission, and I have multiple branches to that. And so sometimes it's hard to talk about all the different things that I do, but my centralized hub right now is I post a lot on LinkedIn. And I don't know when this is going to air, but I'll be doing a masterclass on how professional coaches and just professionals can leverage AI in practical ways. I'm going to release some of the case studies and research that I've done, having worked with hundreds of coaches. So I'll be doing that on March 26th. So I hope this launches before that. Now that I've said that on the air, but yeah. So if you're curious about any of that stuff, find me on LinkedIn, reach out to me, tell me Joy sent you. And then, and then if you want to learn more, then there's a free masterclass. You can learn more.
Excellent. Free 99, everybody. You hear that? Free 99. So I just so appreciate you and wish you the best of more. It's not even luck, just bigger and better things for you, Tim. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, appreciate you, Joy. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks. And everyone, thanks for listening and watching. And if you like what you heard, and you'll hear it after I finish rapping, but if you like what you heard, just keep on sharing and listening. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to Career View Mirror. If you got value from this episode, please consider leaving a rating and a review for the show on Apple Podcasts, or head on over to Spotify and click 5 stars for our show. We also have a YouTube channel with video versions of our episodes, so subscribe over there for more content. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next episode.